If you came to Bali, say 5-10 years ago, and you had $5 million to invest, you couldn't. You couldn't. Bali as a market is still it's still a massively growing market. Professionally managed villas roughly generate about 60% higher revenue than self-managed villas.
10 to 12 is perfect numbers because I don't know more countries, more locations that could provide some such numbers.
If you had an Airbnb in 2014, you put it on Airbnb, you would probably not pay any taxes, to be honest. Many people didn't pay taxes. And you can basically charge what you want because the market is not very competitive.
That strategy is about like short term, raise money, next next island. So hey guys, today I am meeting a wonderful person, the CEO of OXO development in Bali, the Johannes Weissenbeck, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and a long time I wanted to make this clip, make this film with you because you have a wonderful and interesting company in Bali. And when I came at the end of 2022, I had a lot of friends in developments here, and all of them told me about you, about your company, about the project. It is so interesting for me to investigate your story, to know the background, and how did you come to Bali, and why? How did you create all these perfect projects?
Okay. Well, it's a long story.
Yeah.
I came for the first time back in 1992.
Wow.
So you were probably not born at that time. And that was simply on holiday and for surfing. I had a passion for surfing, and I came back, and this was back in the early days of Bali. And then I used to live in London. I worked in London for a long time, although being from Austria. And after that, I moved to Australia. And I was 15 years in Sydney in Australia. And when you fly between Australia and Central Europe, Bali is a bit like a nice stopover. Yeah. So I stopped over in Bali many, many times. And that's how I got to know the culture and the island and the people. And I always fell in love with Bali in a way. And I was used to work in the creative industries, so in branding and marketing before.
And your education also in this field?
In engineering, actually. So engineering and also business. I studied business. And so in a way, I always sort of connected with Bali a little bit. But I had a dream, and my dream was always to build a house and to live on an island. Because Austria is a landlocked country, and you don't have a sea, so you always want what you don't have.
But you have mountains.
So that was my dream. And then when in Australia, we sold our business there, and I decided to move. And
what was your first business?
It was in marketing. So we had a marketing branding
marketing
company.
Services.
And then it was like a sort of break in my life, in a sense, to do something really new. And I wanted to move to Asia. I wanted to live on an island. I wanted to build a house. And that was the move to Bali. And and then that's what I did. I moved to Bali. We built the first house, which was Villa Chameleon. And then from that, we built another one, and another 4, and another 6, and another 15. And now it's evolved into a whole development business 10 years later.
And what year did you start the development of Chameleon?
2014.
14.
So 2014, yeah. So more than 10 years ago now.
And it wasn't like for investment, it was like for yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what we have done over the last 10 years, it's also in a way how Bali evolved. At the time, people came to Bali to either sort of buy a shack, like a leasehold shack somewhere to come and surf or any of that, or you're really building a large property. My first property was like 4,000 square meters of land and around 1,100 square meters of building. So it was quite a big property. And this was characterized by what lots of properties in Bali were like, you because you could afford it and because you wanted a big space and all of that. And that was the beginning when I moved to Bali. What we in a way started, and that became a bit of a trend, was I asked myself, after living there, do I really need this much space? Do I really need 7-8 staff in my villa? And I thought there must be a market for smaller properties that are also designed very, very well and also built very, very well. But because they're smaller, they can come at a smaller price point. And this is also the evolution of the market in Bali. It used to be very big villas in Bali. And I asked myself, do you really need all this space? There's a lot of people who also want to have high quality. They want to have a great experience, but maybe they don't have a budget for that. And also, you don't need it, And this is when I remember very well in Umalas, we started this townhouse concept. You know, the townhouse concept didn't really exist. And I asked myself, what do we call these smaller villas that are wall to wall, but still at a very, very high quality? And then we started this idea of creating sort of townhouses. And now when you look at Bali, you know, townhouses are everywhere and apartments are coming and all of that. But this kind of shows the evolution a little bit. So it went from really large properties to smaller properties. And now when you look at last year, 2024, the market grew in the 1 and 2 bedroom category by 40%.
Yeah.
And I think that really shows how the market's changed. You know, it used to be 10 ara, now it's 1 ara, you know, 1,000 square meters, now it's you know, or 10,000 square meters sometimes even. And now it's like 100 square meters of land plots.
And who was your first clients? Who were your first clients when we are talking about the, in Umala's townhouses? Were it investors or like people just buying for themselves, for living by themselves?
It was for us, and I think that is our core at OXO. We have an investment community who are pure investors. I would say that's around 25%. So it's about 25 to 30%. The majority, so the 75% of all of our investors are what we call lifestyle investors. So they are people who, you know, for sure it's an investment, for and foremost. They want to have a return on investment. But probably more important, they have a connection with Bali and they love Bali. They come to Bali once a year, twice a year, sometimes 4 times a year. And for them, it's like they want to use that property for themselves, for the family, they want to stay there. And when they go, that asset generates a revenue. So what that means is it's not purely about yield. It's also about protecting that asset for the long term. And that's why we also do a lot in freehold, you know, because people realizing, you know, this is an asset that I want to have for the long term, or at least I want to protect that value for the long term. And it has to to generate a yield.
So do all your projects have freehold land?
No, not all of them. We started off with leasehold. Actually, the first project was freehold.
Then
Chameleon was freehold. Then we had a couple of leasehold projects, usually quite long leases. So some of them have 50-year leases, so quite long.
It's 2 contracts, 30 plus 20.
Yes, correct. Okay. And then, and now the last few projects were all focused on freehold. And in terms of the, you know, the community that we're building, I think it's very heavily focused on Europe. So we have a lot of people from, you know, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, also Spain now. And then of course feeder markets like Australia, you know, because Australia is close. So a lot of people coming, you know, to Australia multiple times a year. And now also Singapore and Hong Kong. So we've got people from the feeder regions who say, look, I like Bali. I have a connection to Bali. Also, when you look at Singapore, for example, Singapore has become very, very expensive. So we have got people who are deciding to live in Bali and working in Singapore. So they go to Singapore once a week for meetings and all of that, but they actually live in Bali.
Because it's much more or less expensive.
Yeah, and also the lifestyle. I mean, the lifestyle is amazing. You know, if you like surfing or if you like mountains or nature, it's really, really, really nice.
Yeah. All your projects has unique design, like special design, and you collaborate with the big names like Alexis Dornier. And how was the idea to start working with such people?
I mean, for us, I think OXO has always been, you know, standing for top quality, and top quality doesn't mean just construction quality. I mean, we've got a big construction team or construction supervision team. We work with some of the best contractors in Indonesia. You know, we really focus on the quality from the ground up. But when you think about the market in Bali, you know, ultimately it's around the actual residents or guests who spend the time in that villa, you know, or intend to spend time in that property.
Yeah.
And that means the design is actually really, really important.
Sure.
And the design goes very closely with the experience. So what we normally do is we say, okay, what is the experience we want to create with this property? And then we brief the architects to deliver that experience. And that experience usually links back to the location, you know, so, you know, it depends very much, you know, if you are close to the beach or if you are in the mountains or wherever you may be, or if you're more in an urban area, you know, like say, for example, Canggu area is very urban now. And what we found was to work with high-profile architects helps to really capture that experience. You know, you need people who really spend time trying to capture that. And working with Alex Estonia, for example, was very intuitive. He's a German architect. We are Austrians. Sort of we understand each other to capture that experience.
Yeah.
Now, Chris Precht is very focused on wellness and sustainability, and that was very important for this project.
Does he make projects in Europe? Yeah.
Yes, I mean he works all around the world. I mean he works in North America. He works in Europe, of course. He's done a lot in Asia. He was more than 10 years in Asia. His wife is also Chinese, so he's done a lot in China. He's done work in Indonesia before, but this is the first project in Bali. But again, we choose the architects based on the project and the brief. And for this particular project, it was very important to capture the identity of Bali, to build something around wellness, and also to have this sustainability angle that we have as a business, and he's very strong in that.
Okay, so let's talk about the locations, because now you mostly construct and build your projects in Nuanu city. The last years, the market of Bali real estate has changed a lot, and the prices for the land magnificently grew. And why have you chosen to build in Nuanu?
Okay,
why
very good question.
Not in Bukit, for example?
Yeah, very good question. So I think let's zoom out a little bit about the whole market itself. I mean, the market grew last year 20%. So that's a big change. What's also happening is it's diversifying. So people used to invest in Bali, or they came to Bali and they said, I go to Bali. That was 10 years ago. Now you come to Bali, but then you say like, okay, but where in Bali? Are you going to Ubud? Are you going to Canggu?
Bukit,
are you going to the Bukit? Are you going to Sanur? So each of those areas are now developing their own identities. And in my view, there will be 5 main areas in Bali. One of them will be what I call the CBD of Bali, which is the Canggu business district, which is basically everything from Kuta, Legian, Canggu to Prerenan. And this will become a very dense area and urban area. This is where you have the business, this is where you have the offices, this is where you will have the restaurants and all the action.
Commercial real estate.
Exactly. But you will also have the pollution, you'll have the traffic, you will have what any urban or dense area automatically has. Then you will have the Bukit. And the Bukit is the wider Bukit in sense of, Uluwatu all the way to Nusa Dua. And it will be very much a holiday destination. It has the beaches, it has the surf, it has all of that. Nusa Dua will probably take more the premium side of that holiday, the international hotels. And I think the way I can see it developing now is it's probably going to be more of a mainstream area in the Bukit on the other side, which is more, surfers and that side of things. Ubud always has been a bit the spiritual capital of Bali. And if you're going to meditate and find yourself and do all of that, I think Ubud will always remain that spiritual center in a sense. And then I think you have new destinations coming. And then that new destination around Nuanu Creative City, basically call it a force of two from 2 angles. One is it's a macro trend, that is just going up the southwest coast. And land prices are going up. And that means we are moving more and more along the coast. And that's a natural trend. And for that reason, I think this area around Tanalot will be very, very strong. Tanalot Temple brings around 3 million people every year. So that in itself is a destination. So that fuels also this area. And then there's Nuanu Creative City. Nuanu Creative City, I think, has 2 things. One is there's investment going in there. It's probably going to be a, $400 million investment that will fuel this area. And that means it's structured investment. It's not just like, somebody building a house and someone building a restaurant. It's really structured investment. And the second part, which is more the qualitative side of things, Nuanu has very, very clear vision and very clear values. And the vision is really based around families, because families, it's not that easy to really enjoy time with families unless you stay in your resort. So Nusa Dua is very strong for that. But when you really want to connect locally and don't feel like a tourist, I think Nuanu will be very powerful. And why does it work for families? It's because 70% will stay green. So nature is a very strong part of that. It has it's focused on education. So you have got the schools, you have the kindergartens, and you have also this park. For kids, it's amazing. You can just run around and drive around. So education is a very important part. Then you have art and design and all the creative side of things. And then you have the wellness side of things. So all of these things make it a very attractive destination. And I think Nuanu now, I think on weekends, they already have around 7,000 people a day. And I think it will explode as a destination that is looking for nature, for art, for design, for wellness and community. It's not anymore Bali as an island. Bali now has diversity. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And it depends a little bit what you want. And you will go to this area or the other area.
And in the nearest time, you don't look to another locations like Ubud, maybe north part of Bali?
No, we do. What's also happening is we are partnering with other developers. So, for example, in the Bukit, we have partnered with developers, and we will manage those properties.
Like a management company?
As our management company.
Not like a development company?
Correct. So because ultimately we are trying to generate a good return for our investors, and we don't want to compete with ourselves. So if we are managing a property that we're developing ourselves, we don't want to have another property right next door. It doesn't make sense. So we have this strategy based around connecting journeys. So the connecting journey idea is that people spend around 3 days in each locations, and we are trying to create a net of different properties around Bali. So that's why we are very strong in Canggu already. We will be very strong in the Nuanu area, the Tanah Lot area. We are now partnered already with developers down in the Bukit, and we're also looking at Ubud as a destination, and we're also looking outside of Bali as a destination.
If we're talking about your management company, so when you manage your personal projects, you are very confident on the quality of construction, and when you manage other projects, how could you be so confident in the quality of construction? Because you have own team, you can control them, and other developers, sometimes they could make some mistakes, and maybe the numbers of ROI for the investors could be lower. What do you think about that?
No, that's why I think we operate our management company not so much like a villa management company. A villa management company here in Bali would take any villa. They don't really care about the inventory itself. It's basically, it's a numbers game. You have as many properties as you have. Some of them will be good, some of them won't be good. We are probably Bali's one of the most premium and branded property management companies. So we put our name on those properties. So that means we can't take any villa. It has to be a villa that meets our standards and that meets the quality standards. And for that reason, we provide services on onboarding those properties. We call it technical services and pre-opening services. So we work very closely with those developers to make sure that those properties are built in the correct way, but then also can be operated in the right way. So for example, we have this situation a lot where developers, they're building for maximum sales value, but they don't think about storage. They don't think about the staff journey. Where do the staff stay? Where do the staff park? All those little things that are very important from an operational perspective. And that's what we will provide as part of those technical services and pre-opening services, so that we make sure that those properties actually live up to the OXO name and the OXO brand.
How many projects now do you have as a management company?
So we'll have around 300 keys. So next year it will be around 300 keys that we are carefully selected, and they all are non-competitive, and they are complementary when it comes to the guest experience.
And if we're talking about the marketing, so you mostly use aggregators like Booking and Airbnb, or you have another tools?
So we have aggregators, of course. We're working with all the OTAs that provide us, I guess, a very large distribution footprint. But we have a high percentage of our bookings are direct. That's direct bookings and repeat bookings. So the idea again is what we call connecting journeys. People come into our ecosystem, say they come from an OTA, and then they'll say, I'd like to go to Ubud, or I'd like to book a multi stopover journey, and then we help them book that with our concierge service.
Nice. I need to show you our project in Ubud. It's very nice, and we think about the management company.
Great.
And let's talk about numbers, because a lot of brokers and real estate agencies like mine, for example, spend a lot of money for advertising Bali as the most profitable real estate market in the world, and that it's possible to earn like 12, 13, sometimes 15% ROI from your real estate. And now we see that some of these projects that we have, they really give these numbers to the investors, but a lot of they don't. And if we're talking about your cases, about the Umalas townhouses, OXO in Canggu, right?
Yeah, in Brava,
and Brava. And what real ROI do these projects give to your investors?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I think it also depends on many factors. Firstly, when you look at Bali as an investment market, it's becoming a mature investment market. So what that means is, if you had an Airbnb in 2014, when Airbnb came to Bali, you put it on Airbnb, you probably most likely had somebody to manage it, like some lady or some guy who would manage your villa. You would probably not pay any taxes, to be honest. Many people didn't pay taxes. And and you can basically charge what you want because the market is not very competitive. So in that respect, it's a very sort of free and unstructured way of operating. Now the market is becoming more competitive and much more structured and much more professional. There's good and bad things, which means the guys who got away without paying taxes, they will not get away with that, because we're becoming a more mature market. So suddenly you're paying 10% villa tax that comes off the top line, and that has an impact on your ROI.
Yes.
The same thing is when you look at professionally managed versus self-managed properties. Professionally managed villas roughly generate about 60% higher revenue than self-managed villas, simply because it's a professional team. It's you have a property marketing, revenue management, and all of that. So it depends whether you manage it yourself or whether you have it professionally managed. The third component is, how much of that property do you actually use yourself? If you come with your family for 3 months during June, July, August, your ROI will be very different than if you come with your family in January, February, March.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that have an impact on your return. If you look at it as a pure investment, you should deliver around 10 to 12% for a leasehold property and about 8 to 10% for a freehold property.
That's nice
I think
numbers.
that is a rule of thumb that I think everyone should be looking for. If you're using the property, for example, it's a freehold and you're spending a lot of time yourself, your ROI will drop.
Sure.
Depending on when you come and all of that. If you have a leasehold property that is super cheaply built and you are really, really working it very, very hard, you might get to 12%, maybe even more. But then the asset might depreciate very quickly. It's very easy for me to achieve, say, higher numbers.
Yeah.
The maintenance costs will, explode after 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So, for us, it's really about creating a balance of asset protection and yield. You're trying to create a balance of that. And you look at our properties, for example, in Brava or in Umalas, they're now, say, 4 years old. They look like day one. They look like brand new. If you don't invest into that constantly, of course the yield will go up. But then you're facing a big renovation.
10 to 12 is perfect numbers, because I don't know more countries, more locations that could provide some such numbers.
I say, the rule of thumb, if you can do 10% as an average, as a company, I think you're doing a very good job.
Yeah.
Anyone saying to me they can do 15 or 20 or anything like that, I'm like, okay, how does that physically work? If you have to pay taxes, if you have to service charge, you pay your team, I know for a fact that the property management business isn't a highly profitable business.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of cases when the investor resell their property to another investor? And
yes.
What is the interest rate for the first investor?
I think what we are trying to do with our investors is really build a long-term relationship. So we call it, like I always say, when you invest, it's the beginning of a journey, not the end of a journey. You buy a house, people think like, oh, I've bought a house, I'm sort of done. The truth is, as a lifestyle real estate market, you're almost married to a developer and you're married to the management company.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a marriage,
Yes.
and you have to really build,
yeah.
exactly. You have to build a long-term win-win relationship. So what we also do sometimes is we help investors to exit, their investments because they want to buy another one. Say we're launching a new project, they say, oh, I want to let that one go now, and I want to buy the new one, and we help people do that.
Your sales team, yeah?
Yeah, our sales team does that. Or we work with agents as well. We all sort of a family. Also with the agents and everyone. It's kind of like, I believe in win-win. So what it means is, of course, there is any investor wants to have a capital gain. Not only the rental yield, but also a capital gain. And what we can see now is, especially when you buy off-plan, you will have probably around a 20% capital gain by the time you have completion.
Like 2 years?
Yeah, say in 2 years or so that means you're not only, you're basically offsetting your because you don't have revenue for that period. So that's what you offset through capital gain. And then it takes around 1 to 3 years to stabilize the property. When you launch a property, it doesn't do the same yield as if you are, say, 1 or 2 or 3 years into operation.
Yes.
Because the area will grow, the operation will get better, the brand of this particular property will grow. So usually a good time to sort of exit a property is between, I would say, 3 to 5 years. And this is usually the investor horizon that most of our investors bring to a property.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years.
How many percentage rate?
You should be looking at around 50. You should be looking around 50% for that.
So
say 20% growth within 2 years, and then say 5 years around 50%.
Okay. Could you give the details of your new project that you sell right now, that your company sell right now?
Yeah, so we have a new project called OXO, the Pavilions.
Yeah.
We just unveiled it last week. Now we have around 3-4 weeks until we open for sale. Now, the project is 24 villas, starting around $550,000, all of them freehold. They are designed by Chris Brecht, developed by OXO, managed by OXO, and done in collaboration with Nuanu Creative City. So what that means is we can also provide priority access to Nuanu and all the facilities and all of that. In terms of how we sell, that's quite unique. We unveiled the project right now, and we are taking what we call expression of interest. That means people make a fully refundable deposit, and with that they get a slot in the queue to actually purchase the properties.
Like in Dubai?
Like in Dubai, exactly, or in Singapore, or in Australia, it's very similar. What that does is it makes it very fair. You know, there's no sort of deals going on from one person to the another. It's a very fair and structured process. You make your reservation. With that reservation, you have access to a data room. In the data room, you have access to all the contracts, you have access to all the projections, the investment projections. You also have, of course, access to all the floor plans and all the details, and an investment advisor, whether this is through an agency like yourself, or whether this is through a sales team, or whatever you have. And that gives time to really take time to evaluate the product, to ask all the questions and do all of that. And then on 8th of June this year, we will open it for sale, and then people can buy in that order. So it's very stressless, it's very simple, it's very fair, it's very structured.
And most of your clients, it's that who want to live there, for example, 2 weeks or 1 month per year, and most of that time, and then this property will give them like revenue from rent?
It's usually a combination. I think in each of our properties, we have people who actually live there. It's a minority. When I say live there, I mean permanently. I'm talking about years. It's a small minority of people who say, I'm gonna live there and I'm really gonna spend the next, say, 3 to 5 years there. Even if they live there, they're already thinking about an exit, or they're thinking about using it as an investment property. So for example, you might be here for a year or two and you say, I live there with my family, but then I move on to, say, Europe or anywhere, and then I will rent it out. The majority of investors, they would rent it, I would say, around 11 months per year. So this is the majority. So they spend a month here. That could be 2 times 2 weeks. It could be 4 times a week. But usually it's around a month that they don't generate a revenue because they stay there. And then we have around, as I said earlier, about 20 to 30% of investors who are pure investors. I mean, we have investors who bought 3 houses from us, and they never came to Bali. Never came to Bali. So they just go like, okay, let me know when I should sell it, or let me know what I should do. For them, it's a pure investment. But that's about 20 to 30%.
And what about the prices for these houses?
For this particular one, it starts at $550.
Okay.
US dollar, $550,000 US dollars.
For how many square meters?
So that would be a 3-bedroom.
Okay.
At around 300 square meters of land. And the building size is around 180 square meters to going up to around 200 square meters.
Okay, and the bigger one is 750.
It goes up to 1 million. So the largest, the 5-bedroom, is around starting at around 1 million, and the land size is around 550 square meters, and the building size is between 350 to around 400 square meters.
Nice. I think if our audience is interested, you can give your phone under this clip, and our team will share all the materials about this project. I have a question about the principles of building this company, because as I listen to you, it's so simple. I just come to Bali, just one project, second project, and I realized that development business is not as simple as I hear. And what basement principles do you have for building this business and for building your projects that makes it so successful in this market?
Good question.
Yeah.
And I think the simplest answer is when you think about real estate, to make a decision to invest into real estate on whatever level it is probably one of the biggest financial decisions you make. You know, if you are, say, a first-time investor and you're buying something for $200,000, it's a big decision. If you are an investor, multiple investor, and you're buying your third villa or your third house and you're investing $1 million, it's a big decision. So the core of all of that is trust. And I mean, I guess where I come from in Austria, Germany, you know, trust is very, very important.
Yes.
And when you say A, you do A. You know, that it is in our culture and it is very important. And I think that helped a lot because, you know, ultimately what we're doing is we're building relationships with people, within our investors, we're building relationship with our staff, with our team, with our partners, you know, contractors and different partners, agents.
Yeah.
So it's a network of trust. And I think that is the core to our success, really, that we've built. And what that also means is you cannot go too fast. You know, you have to build something, you have to deliver that, you have to do well, you have to provide what you have promised over time. And, you know, you can't just go and, you know, build something that, you know, isn't what you promised. So we invest a lot of time and energy into doing what we promise. And with that, we've built trust. And then that trust starts to sort of grow and snowball in a way. And now after 10 years, we've done around, I think now it's project 9 that we've done. We've delivered now 6 projects, completed them, and they are operating and all of that. And it's just slowly but surely, a step at a time, you know, that builds the trust and builds those relationships. And there's no magic in it, really. It's a lot of hard work, and it's ultimately delivering what we promise.
So you don't try to earn $100 million in 1 or 5 years. You have a long-term strategy.
Yes, we have a long-term strategy. We have a 2030 strategy. Also, what's important to understand is we're in a unique position because we have a development company and a management company. Now, what that means is they're in a way mutually contradictory. If I sell, for example, some of these property projects that we're launching now, we can probably sell for 10% more. But if I do that, it will automatically impact on the returns of our investors. So it has to be a balanced relationship between the guest, for and foremost. So whoever stays there is the one paying to investors, it's the one paying to us,
Yes.
it's the one paying. So the guest must be happy.
Yeah.
If the guest is not happy or the resident is not happy, everything will fall apart.
Yeah.
So we always start with the rate and with the guest number one. Then you end up with a relationship with an investor that has to be a long-term relationship. You want to be happy with, you know, both have to be happy. So we are limited in terms of what we can charge if we want to have an ecosystem that works for the long term. So that's the third part. So the guest is number one, the investor is number two. Ourselves as a developer, you know, we want to make money with what we, you know, the hard work we do. The management company needs to be paid for operating that asset. And also agents are very important, you know. So whether it's a real estate agent or whether it's a OTA, everyone has to ultimately be happy with this relationship. This is what we're trying to do. It's an ecosystem that works for the long term. If one of those 5 pillars break down, the system breaks down. You know, so that's why it's very fragile and it's very important to keep those things going.
You manage by yourself or you have some partners?
I have business partners. So I have in the management company, I have a business partner. Wayan is a Balinese partner. And we've built the company together on that side. On the development side, it's mainly me driving it. And on the group side, it's mainly me driving it. So I'm the majority shareholder. You know, we are a developer and manager at the same time. That means we are, if you only did development, you know, you basically, all you want to do is you want to buy some land, you want to raise some capital and you sell to investors and then you're out. You have no responsibility after you've sold, really, apart from some warranties or anything like that. What we do is, this is completely different. We build a long-term relationship. And that's where we are limited in terms of pricing and all of that, because it's an ecosystem that has to work for the long term. And and it's a different philosophy.
Yeah.
And coming back to what you said, you want to be big. I always believe if you want to be successful, there's only 2 ways to be successful. One is you're really large in what you do, or you're really, really good at what you do. And ideally, you're both.
Yes.
Ideally, you're both. So you take a brand like Apple. Apple is very large and very good in what they do.
Is it possible to become really large and not very good, because you will have a lot of negative feedbacks from the clients?
There's a lot of companies who do that. They operate on scale. They operate on smaller margin. They're very good at that, and they're very good with scale. There's a lot of companies in lots of industries who are very successful with that. But I think it's what comes first. And when you're a company like in a market like Bali, I think you have to be great first. And that's our first philosophy. We want to be great. We really want to be great. And I think now slowly we are proving that we are leading the industry, and we're showing sort of how it can be done, even on a smaller scale. There's a lot of developers that are larger than us, but they're not great. And I think the size and the growth will come. But you really have to focus on
you have like
on that first.
Boutique format, yeah.
Not so boutique. We have a pipeline now of around 70 million USD, so it's not boutique. We are larger than many developers here, but we are definitely focused on the quality, not the quantity, in terms of where we want to go.
Yeah.
And the quantity will come.
What are the main challenges that you have right now of your projects in your company?
Good question. I think for sure we are growing. I think also there's a lot of hype in the market at the moment in terms of what the market stands for. And I think there's been a lot of confusion in the market. When you hear a lot of people saying, you can deliver 20% ROI, then also our investors come to us and say, look, everyone else is saying 20% ROI. So that's a challenge, so to educate.
From renting?
Yes.
Okay.
So how do you educate people and say, well, not really, that's not really possible,
Yes.
So there's a lot of confusion in the market. And I think what's happened that a lot of developers entered and a lot of brands have entered who are basically making promises and telling stories. And I think now is the time where the market is shaking up. I think this year will be the time where the strong ones will come to the top, and the not so strong ones, or the ones who have sort of made the false promises, will sort of depart from the market, or they will face the challenges. So because we're connected to the market, I think one of the major challenges to how do we differentiate from the market, and how do we stay true to ourselves. And my answer to that was ignore the market, just do what you do it well, and the people who understand it, they will follow, and they will understand it, and they will feel it.
You have a great case when you make sold out for just one day residences, yeah, OXO residences.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, it was a completely different approach, and I think it was a bit like what you said earlier. Like we tried to separate from the market. The market was flooded last year with 1 and 2 bedroom properties. As I said earlier, I think there was a 40% growth in that category. And for us, we said, okay, we're going to separate ourselves in 3 ways. The first one was we focused on freehold. So we didn't want to be part of leasehold, of the leasehold category market. The second one was we focused on 3, 4, and 5 bedroom as opposed to 1 and 2 bedroom, because everything is focusing on that market. And the third one was we're focusing on mature investors that are looking for a more stable long-term investment. And with that, we wanted to go to market in a completely different way. This is actually what we're doing now with the pavilions as well, where we said we want every investor to be on the same timeline. So it's not like, okay, yes, we can do a deal today and someone else can do another deal tomorrow. We said, no, we're not going to do that. Every person is on the same timeline. We show the same information to everyone at the same time, and we offer the opportunity to invest exactly at the same time. The fact that we sold out in the first day wasn't really, was a nice opportunity, and it was great to have. It wasn't really planned. I mean, we launched the project and we had so much demand that everyone, bought it on the first day. But that doesn't have to happen all the time. But what was important for us was that everyone is on the same timeline. So which means it's a very fair and a very transparent process.
Because everyone was talking about this case. Did you hear that OXO made this?
Yeah. No, it was amazing. It was a good product. And I think this year, I hope we have a similar response. But it's not about that. It's not about selling in one day. I think that the key is more like to really bring everyone on the same timeline. And I think from an investor's perspective, what it means is that, if we didn't sell anything, as an example, we would have failed, let's be honest. And we would have said to, we can just basically stop the product. The product was not right.
Yeah.
So from an investment perspective, it's also low risk.
Yeah.
So for example, if we are selling, say, 50% or 70% on that first day, then there's a lot of confidence there.
Yeah.
You know that it's a good product, and then for sure we would raise the prices and sell it for higher later, which is better for an investor. But in that way, we pass on those benefits to investors. We sell it at a price that we think is very, very fair, and then if the demand is there, it's hopefully great for everyone.
What is your forecast for the Balinese real estate market, like in 1, 2, 3, 5 years? Where do we go?
I think the Balinese market, or Bali as a market, is still it's still a massively growing market. I don't think that people said 100 years ago that tourism has killed Bali and it's over. And I heard the same when I came 100 years ago. When tourists came to Bali, and it was literally like exactly it's the end of the island. When I came to Bali in 2014, I heard exactly the same story, and now the same story happens again. So I don't think that Bali is such a strong brand. When you look at the areas of development, it's super small, on the scheme of things. We're talking, people talk about traffic and they show pictures of Canggu, and it's a micro area. If you're going out of this area like 15 minutes north or west, you're in a completely different world.
Yeah.
So I think as a market, it's just becoming mature. I think now we're entering this area where the infrastructure, in terms of the legal infrastructure, the tax infrastructure, all of that is now becoming much more structured and much more professional. And that means it's becoming a more mature investment market. If you came to Bali, say 5-10 years ago, and you had $5 million to invest, you couldn't. You couldn't.
Yeah.
There were no projects where you could invest $5 million. Maybe you find a villa, but not easy. Mm-hmm. You would go to a real estate agent, and they would have lots of different individual villas, but you couldn't deploy 5 or 10 million. Now you can. And for that, you require more professional development infrastructure, management infrastructure, legal infrastructure, tax infrastructure, and Bali has that now.
And do you think that ROI will decrease due to that?
The ROI decrease? I think what will happen is the development will spread. Mm-hmm. So in certain areas it will decrease. I mean, it is a fact that the ROI in Bali has decreased. Sorry, not the ROI, but the occupancy has decreased in Bali last year, simply because of a flood of inventory. So the game in the future will not be around development, it will be about management. Mm-hmm. So the ROI game is not a developer's game, it's a manager's game. Because the management company, and if you have a branded management company like we have, it's the one that will generate the ROI. It's not the developer who will give you the ROI. So investors have to be careful, and they should not meet just the developer. They should meet the management company. Yes. Who is managing? That is the key question, I think.
How do you filter the project that you will manage? Because it's really interesting. A lot of projects, I'm sure that a lot of companies really want to work with you as a management company. And you can't take all of them.
Correct. No, we're very selective in that.
Yeah.
So the process is very simple. I think there's the location is number one. We want to be in locations that are non-competitive. So we don't want to have, if you have 4 seasons, you're not going to have 4 seasons next to each other.
Yeah.
You have 1 4 seasons in Jimbaran and you have 1 4 seasons in Ubud. And I think we have a similar approach. So we have non-competitive inventory in different locations. That's the first one. So it's about location. The second one is about the experience. You need to have a consistent experience. So with OXO, we have an experience that is based around 6 key areas. It's based around F&B, it's based around wellness, it's based around impact, it's based around music, it's based around art and design. So we have very clear criteria that we use to design the customer experience. And then we create that customer experience consistently across all of those properties. That means that some properties where we can't create that experience, they don't fit us, because we have to create consistency in those experiences. So if you stay as an OXO in Jimbaran or in Nusa Dua or in Ubud or in Canggu, it has to be a similar experience.
Okay.
So that is a very, very important point. And with that, you can charge a premium rate. We always measure ourselves not necessarily against what we have done or what we are doing. We're measuring against the market. Mm-hmm. So because the market changes, if you come to Bali in January, it's a very different rate than if you come in August. And we measure ourselves against that market rate. Mm-hmm. And we charge a premium. It's a 35% premium that we would demand for a similar room category or a similar villa category.
Okay. Which locations will you see that will be so popular in the nearest 2-5 years? Maybe northern part, Munduk, Kintamani, or do you think that in western part like Nuanu?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, in terms of what is the location? I mean, I always hear these outliers of amazing projects that are really, really great, and sort of destinations where people go, and it's a villa that is trending on Instagram right now. To me, that's not a location. Just because you're building a villa that is really, really cool right now, and then a year later it's something else, I wouldn't call that a location. I look at it more as a substantial infrastructural sort of destinations. And I think the destinations are, I think there's 5 destinations. The Bukit is one destination for sure. Nusa Dua, I think, is one destination. I mean, Nusa Dua is a very strong, destination for hotels, and I mean, people will go there on holiday. I think there's no doubt. You have got all the international brands there and all of that. The Bukit, simply because of the natural beauty and all of that, the beaches, it will be a destination. Canggu and the area around Canggu, Prerenan, even to Sese, but also backwards. I think Kuta will have a revival. I really believe that. Seminyak. It's a very, very strong destination, and when you look at the numbers, when you look at the performance of those markets, a lot of people go there. So I think that's
from China.
Exactly. Yeah. There's it's a very strong destination. And then you have Ubud. I think everything in the greater area of Ubud will be a strong destination. And then I think the last one will be the wider Tanah Lot area. So I say Tanah Lot because there's of course Nuanu will drive this, not only from a short term but also long term stays. There's a lot of people coming to this area now for a year, or for 6 months, not just for like 3 days. But also this whole area around Tanah Lot will emerge, I think, more as a sustainable tourism destination that is more based around, art and sustainability and nature, because it has all in a way. It has beach access, it has a master planned vision, it has culture, with the Tanah Lot temple and the villages and all of that. And in a way, it has Nuanu that brings the hospitality infrastructure, like the restaurants and the beach club and all this kind of stuff. I'm looking at serious infrastructure when it comes to location. Of course, there's others. You can go to Nusa Lembongan and Penida. You can go to
Sumba.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of these things, but I think they are more driven by individual properties as opposed to a stable, structured destination.
So now you don't believe in Chandidasa, for example, or northern part of Bali when the new airport will be constructed there. What do you think about?
Well, it is to be seen, whether the new airport will be, of course it's planned. I mean, the toll road has been planned. I mean, the Sunset Road expansion has been planned for 30 years. So I think it will take time. Let's be realistic. You look at, for example, Nuanu it took 4 years to get to where we are right now, and it's a major privately led infrastructure development. If you have something as political as an airport or as a toll road or some of those infrastructure, it will take a long time. Yes, I believe that some of these micro destinations will come and will happen, but I think it will take time. Pemutaran, for example, I love Pemutaran. I think it's a great area. Pemutaran, it's northwest of Bali. It's got the connection to Java and all of that. But again, it will take a long time, I think, to be a destination like the ones we're talking here in the south.
Do you have plans to scale your business activities to other countries, other regions, Thailand?
At this stage, no. Of course, we are playing with these ideas, and it sounds great, and I think the brand is strong enough to do that. But I think Bali in itself is really, it's an amazing island. It has a long way to go. We have a project that we are doing a feasibility on now in Labuan Bajo, so Komodo National Park, because we also have yachts. We have about 20 yachts in the portfolio.
It's your company's yacht.
Yeah, so we have one yacht on our books, so one yacht that we own, but we have another around 20 yachts that we market and that we also offer to our guests as part of the wider experience. And that's all around Indonesia, but heavily focused on Komodo National Park. So there's other areas like Komodo, for example, that I really believe in. Culturally, this area is culturally very open. So it's Christian. And it's got real natural beauty, and it's easily accessible. I mean, there's international flights now going into Labuan Bajo. It's 1 hour from Bali. You're on a boat there, for example. You can be on a boat there in, I would say, from Bali to being on the boat in less than 3 hours.
Oh.
It will take you longer to do that in Lombok, which is much closer.
Yeah.
You know, so there's areas that are very accessible, and that we definitely have a look at, have an eye on, and I think they are interesting.
But you can fly there by the plane.
Yeah, you fly there 1 hour, you're there 5 minutes from the airport to the port,
Yeah.
and you're on a boat within like 15 minutes after landing.
But it's a problem about the massive tourism there because many people don't want to go 3 hours, for example.
What do you mean to go for 3 hours? As in
By boat, many people. It's like it won't be a maybe magnificent part of tourists go to Labuan Bajo at the nearest time.
Oh no, there's a lot of people going to Labuan Bajo now. It's growing massively. There's direct flights into it, and people go onto the boat for 3 days. So it's not a boat trip for like a day trip like you have in Bali. It's really you want to see the national park, you want to be on the boat, you want to get that feeling of being on the boat.
Yeah.
So it's a very different experience. It's more of what we call adventures. You know, we call it, we put it in our adventure category, where people go, okay, I'm going to do this for 3 days, and it's part of an itinerary for multiple trips.
Okay. Could you share some information about the project? Can we go there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So in terms of the project, what you can see here is that the project is actually designed in a way that it really works as one unit. The master plan was what took us longest. Why did it take us so long? Because we really wanted to create an environment that has both community and privacy. Because when you think about wellness and when you think about really trying to feel really good, you need two things. You need to be by yourself. Yeah. So that's why privacy is so important. That's why all of these villas, they are either U-shaped or L-shaped, so that you get the sense of, being by yourself with your family, and nobody's looking into your garden or anything like that. But at the same time, we want to create a community. And that's why we have this ring road. You can see here now, when you're coming in here, you've got this ring road, and what that does is it connects you with every single house. So every time you enter, you're connecting with everyone in the little village, if you like. Yeah. And then what we also have is over here, you can see we have what we call the wellness core. So right at the center of the overall space, we have the wellness area. Over 2 levels with a pyramid, and the pyramid is a bit like a symbol of the modern temple, if you like. It's the place where where you find yourself, and you can see it here now on the screen as well. It's the place where you can do your meditations, you can do your rituals, and all of that, and that's where also everyone comes together.
Yeah.
So in terms of the design, you can see the houses, they look like a single story, although they're actually double story. And that was another design feature. We really tried to keep them low, so to keep this sense of luxury. And now in Bali, you see so many 2, 3 story, 4 story buildings. And we wanted to keep that sense of luxury by keeping it relatively low. And then, as I said earlier, the privacy aspect is really, really important. What you also see, all the buildings are separated. They're separated by what we call the gang. And in Indonesia, the gang is like an alleyway or a pathway. And it creates a sense of like where you can walk through the buildings, and you get this sense of almost like a little old town in Europe, when you walk through the buildings. And again, it helps to connect people and to create this sort of very special atmosphere and ambience.
Yeah, very nice. And about the concierge service also, and I can order, for example, food from the Nuanu restaurants,
Yeah, so there's 2 main facilities. So apart from the villas themselves, we have a small reception, juice bar and cafe area in the front. So this doubles really as a way to enter the property. Yeah. So if you arrive, for example, this is where you would check in, this is where you get a coffee or a drink or a cocktail or whatever. And then from that, you'll be taken to your villa. So that becomes the entry point. The name of it, at the moment, the working title is Nowhere. So the idea is really you're coming from nowhere to now here. So it's the same word, but it's 2 meanings. So that's when you arrive. Yeah. And then you have the central wellness core, which is basically a luxury gym. It has a meditation space. It has a indoor pool and aquatherapy. You have treatment rooms. You have a lounge, of course, a reception and changing rooms, and then you have a sauna and a hammam.
And we see here, it's the same style that will be here, yeah? that we see here.
Yes, yes. So you can see here, it's a luxury gym. It's got all the luxury facilities. The main thing, people ask us, why do you build a gym? There will be a gym around. The whole idea is our audience is really, they want privacy. You know, they don't want to be in a gym with 500 other people taking selfies with you in the background.
Yes, yes.
You know, you can even book it, you know. So if you, for example, want to book it for a private event with your family or friends, you can even book some of those spaces.
Nice. And I see a lot of wood that you use in this architecture.
I mean, the model is wood, so all the materials are over there. So we're using natural materials. So there will be a local brick that we use. We use, of course, wood for this roof structure and all that. The roof itself will be a slate, so it will be a very thin stone.
Yeah.
We're using natural stones for the pools, for example, the Bali greenstone. And then, of course, all the vegetation and the landscaping will also be done with lots of natural and, like lots of local plants.
Yeah. Okay, Johannes, it is so interesting project, and I wish you good luck in this not so simple market as Bali is, and I thank you for this interview. I thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.